The night my house burned down, I thought my entire world had ended. I can still taste the smoke in my lungs if I close my eyes. The flames had clawed at the walls like living things, hungry and merciless, reducing years of work, years of dreams, into nothing but charred skeletons. The crackle of timber collapsing, the hiss of water as fire crews tried to tame the inferno, the shouts of neighbors standing helpless in the street. It all fused into a nightmare symphony. But what haunts me most wasn't the fire itself. It was the cold wind that carried the ashes across the Milwaukee night. Ashes that weren't just wood and brick. They were the fragments of every memory I had built inside those walls. My late nights hunched over homework at the kitchen table. My first paycheck framed on the mantel. The photo of Grandma and Grandpa smiling in the garden, now curled and blackened. I stood there shivering, smoke clinging to my clothes, watching as the roof caved in, sparks shooting into the sky like mocking fireworks. And in that moment, as my chest tightened and my heart hammered, one thought consumed me. Grayson did this. My phone vibrated violently in my pocket, jolting me from the horror before me. I pulled it out with trembling hands, my throat raw from smoke. "Ethan?" Grandma's voice shook through the speaker. "Ethan, honey, listen to me. He said something about gasoline." My blood froze. Gasoline. The word hit me like a knife, slicing deeper than the flames ever could. I think Grayson's planning to hurt you," she whispered, her voice breaking into sobs. I closed my eyes, my hand gripping the phone so tightly I thought it might shatter. Anger erupted inside me like the fire itself. My cousin Grayson, selfish, manipulative Grayson, was capable of many things. But arson, trying to destroy me outright, even for him it was unthinkable. And yet, here I stood, in front of the smoking ruins of my life. I didn't wait for the firefighters to finish, didn't wait for neighbors' questions. I climbed into my old car, hands shaking as I jammed the keys into the ignition. The streets blurred past me as I tore through Milwaukee's frozen avenues. Snowflakes streaked across my windshield, headlights bouncing off the slick pavement. Each mile I drove, my fury grew heavier, hotter, even as the winter air clawed at my skin. My knuckles whitened on the steering wheel, nails digging into my palms until they drew blood. My chest rose and fell in jagged bursts. The images wouldn't stop flashing through my mind. Grayson smirking at family dinners, twisting every situation to his advantage. Grayson playing the victim while I was scolded. Grayson the golden boy in my parents' eyes while I, Ethan Cole, was left invisible. And now Grayson the arsonist. Every sacrifice I had made for him, every time I bit my tongue, every dime I had given up, every kindness ignored, roared back like a cruel joke. When I pulled up outside my parents' house, the contrast nearly broke me. From the outside, the home looked like a postcard. Christmas lights twinkled in the frosted windows. Warm laughter spilled into the night. The smell of roasted turkey and cinnamon drifted on the air, carried by the same wind that had carried the smoke of my own house only hours earlier. It was surreal. My life was ashes, and here they were, celebrating, feasting, smiling. I slammed the car door shut and stormed toward the front steps, each crunch of snow under my boots pounding like a war drum in my chest. I didn't knock. I pushed open the door, the blast of warmth and holiday cheer colliding with the cold fury in my veins. The living room was full of relatives, plates in hand, voices raised in laughter. And there, in the center of it all, sat Grayson, relaxed, smirking, as though he hadn't just destroyed my life. "Did you do it?" I demanded, my voice cutting through the room like a blade. The laughter died instantly. Forks froze mid-air. Conversation snapped off. All eyes turned to me. Grayson raised his head slowly, his lips curling into that same infuriating smirk. "Do what?" he asked, casual, mocking. But I saw it. Just for a fraction of a second, the flicker of fear in his eyes. My parents scrambled to their feet. Mom's face was pale, her hands trembling. "Ethan, stop. Don't ruin this night." "Ruin this night?" My voice cracked with rage. "My house just burned to the ground, Mom. Everything I worked for, everything I loved, it's gone. And you're worried about Thanksgiving dinner?" Dad stepped forward, placing himself between me and Grayson like a shield. His voice was stern, but I could see the panic behind it. "You're being irrational. Don't accuse him without proof." Grayson leaned back in his chair, feigning innocence. "Yeah, Ethan. Without proof, it's just your word against mine." I took a step closer, my fists clenched, the heat of the fire still burning in my chest. "Grandma heard you," I spat. "Gasoline. She heard you talking about it. You threatened me." The room fell silent. My mother's lips quivered. My father's jaw tightened, and Grayson's smirk faltered just slightly. "No," Mom whispered, her voice trembling. "It's just a house." That broke something inside me. "Just a house?" I roared, my voice shaking the walls. "It was my life, my memories, my future. And you're protecting him?" Grayson's mask slipped again. His face paled for a heartbeat, his eyes darting. That tiny crack was all I needed. "You did this," I said, my voice lower now, steadier, deadly. "I know you did." My father tried again. "Ethan, calm down. It's Thanksgiving. Don't destroy the family." I laughed bitterly. Destroy the family? The fire already did that. Years of neglect, of favoritism, of betrayal. You destroyed this family long before tonight. I could feel my chest heaving. I turned and walked toward the door. My hands shook as I grabbed a framed photo of Grandma and Grandpa from the shelf, slipping it into my bag. Then I reached for a charred piece of wood I had brought from my house, a relic of the life I had lost. As I stepped into the freezing night, slamming the door behind me, I felt something strange. Clarity. For the first time in years, I wasn't confused. I wasn't silent. I wasn't trying to earn their approval. I knew exactly what I had to do. This wasn't over, not by a long shot. The door slammed shut behind me, and for the first time in years, silence felt like freedom. Snowflakes clung to my jacket as I stood there, breath clouding in the icy night air. Inside, my family would return to their feast, pretending nothing had happened, pretending the fire hadn't consumed everything I owned, pretending Grayson was innocent. My hands tightened around the two things I had carried out: the photo of Grandma and Grandpa, and the charred piece of wood from my old home. Symbols of what I had lost, and of what I refused to let go. I walked to my car, the crunch of snow beneath my boots strangely comforting. My breath shook, my chest heavy with rage and grief. But beneath it all, for the first time, there was clarity. They would not silence me again. I drove aimlessly that night, Milwaukee's empty streets stretching endlessly. Holiday lights glimmered on houses I passed, each one mocking me with their warmth and stability. I thought of my parents' faces, pale, trembling, desperate to shield Grayson. My mother whispering, "It's just a house." The words echoed in my skull like a cruel mantra. Just a house. My house had been my sanctuary, my proof that I could build a life without them. Now it was ash. I pulled over in a quiet neighborhood, killed the engine, and sat there in the darkness. My hands shook as I reached for the photo of Grandma and Grandpa. Their smiles stared back at me, frozen in time. I don't know what to do, I whispered into the cold. But I can't let him win. Not this time. Tears slid down my cheeks, hot against the winter air. For years I had swallowed my pain, convinced myself silence was strength. But silence had only made me invisible, and invisibility had made me vulnerable. No more. My phone buzzed again, her name glowing on the screen. Ethan? Grandma's voice was soft but heavy with guilt. I'm so sorry, I should have spoken up sooner. I heard him. I know it was him. I tried to warn you. It's not your fault, I said quickly, though my throat tightened. You're the only one who ever believed me. You're the only one who ever tried. She sniffled. Your parents? They'll never see it. They've chosen him. They always have. I closed my eyes. Her words weren't cruel. They were just true. And truth had a way of cutting deeper than lies ever could. I'm going to prove it, Grandma, I said. My voice, even if it kills me, I'll make them see. The next day I called Alan. Alan had been my friend since high school. The kind of friend who never cared about appearances, who stood by me even when others didn't. When I told him about the fire, the confrontation, the gasoline, he didn't laugh. He didn't doubt. He just listened. Ethan, he said finally, his voice firm, you need help. Real help. Someone who can find the truth when the police won't touch it. Who? I asked, though part of me already knew I couldn't do this alone. Victor Ramirez, he said. Private investigator. Ex-cop. They say he digs up things nobody else can. If Grayson's guilty, Victor will find it. We met in a coffee shop downtown, the kind of place where the lights were dim and the air smelled of roasted beans and quiet secrets. Victor was older, his hair streaked with gray, his eyes sharp and watchful. He listened as I laid everything out. The fire, Grandma's warning, the confrontation at Thanksgiving. He didn't interrupt. He just scribbled notes in a battered leather notebook, nodding occasionally. When I finished, he leaned back, studying me. Gasoline threats, a fire with suspicious timing, a witness account, he said slowly. It's not enough yet, but it's a start. Hope flickered in my chest. So you'll help? Victor's gaze was steady. If you want the truth, I'll find it. But you have to be ready for whatever we uncover. Sometimes the truth cuts deeper than the lie. I nodded. I've lived with lies my whole life. I'm ready. The days that followed blurred into a rhythm of waiting and watching. Victor scoured the neighborhood, knocking on doors, asking quiet questions. He reviewed grainy gas station footage, tracked vehicle movements, pieced together fragments of timelines. Each evening he'd call me with updates. Grayson's car was spotted near a station the night of the fire. Bought a gas can. Neighbor 2 blocks down says they saw someone moving quickly away from your place. Matches his build. His alibi doesn't hold, times don't match. Each piece of evidence was like a spark, igniting the fire inside me all over again. Proof that I wasn't crazy. Proof that I wasn't just bitter or paranoid. Proof that Grayson really was what I always feared he could be. Sometimes I returned to the ruins of my home. The smell of smoke still lingered, faint but unmistakable. The walls were black skeletons, fragile and broken. The roof was gone, the windows shattered. Each step crunched on debris, memories reduced. They weren't just ruins, they were evidence, they were fuel. Sleep became a stranger. Every night I saw the fire again, heard the crackle, smelled the smoke, saw Grayson smirk through the flames, and worse, I saw my parents, standing in front of him, shielding him with their silence. I'd wake drenched in sweat, my heart pounding. I'd pace the floor until dawn, whispering to myself, "You'll pay for this, Grayson, you'll pay." Memories surfaced like ghosts. Grayson at 12, throwing a tantrum because his bike wasn't the right color. Me, 14, spending my entire savings to buy him the model he wanted, watching him abandon it the next day. Grayson at 17, failing half his classes. Dad blaming the teachers, making excuses. Meanwhile, I made honor roll again and again, but no one clapped. No one noticed. Every memory was a wound I had covered. Now they bled freely, fueling my resolve. 2 weeks later, Victor called. His voice was calm, but I heard the weight behind it. "We've got him." Surveillance footage shows Grayson's car leaving the station with a can of gasoline. Timestamp lines up perfectly with the fire. Witnesses confirm unusual activity near your house that night. It's not just suspicion anymore, Ethan. It's evidence. I sat there gripping the phone, my breath caught in my throat. Finally, I wasn't just the bitter, overlooked son. Finally, I had proof. But proof was only the beginning. Thanksgiving was coming again. The house would be full of warmth, laughter, food. The same house where they had dismissed me, silenced me, protected Grayson at my expense. I thought of the file Victor had compiled, thick with photos, reports, statements, a weapon disguised as paper. This time, I wouldn't storm out in rage. This time, I'd walk in with control, with evidence, with truth. I imagined the look on Grayson's face when the facade cracked. The fear in my parents' eyes when they realized they couldn't protect him anymore. The silence that would follow when the truth was laid bare. This wasn't about revenge, not anymore. It was about reclaiming my life. The week crawled by like a countdown clock, each day pressing heavier on my chest. Thanksgiving was coming, again. But this time, it wasn't just another dinner. This time, it was the stage. I had Victor's file, thick with evidence, surveillance footage, receipts, witness statements, notes tying Grayson to the fire. Every page was a dagger aimed at the truth. I carried it everywhere. At night, I laid it on my desk and stared at it like a soldier studying his weapon before battle. In the morning, I slipped it into my bag like armor. This wasn't going to be a shouting match, not like last time. This was going to be precise, undeniable. Thanksgiving night arrived, heavy with snow. The streets glistened with frost, every house glowing with warmth and laughter. Families gathered inside, clinking glasses, carving turkeys, giving thanks. And there I was, walking through the cold with the file under my arm, my heart pounding like a drum. The closer I got to my parents' house, the louder the laughter grew. The smell of cinnamon, sage, and roasted meat hit me long before I reached the door. It was the same house where I had once stormed out, humiliated. The same house where Grayson smirked while my parents shielded him. But tonight I wasn't the same, Ethan. Tonight I was armed. I pushed the door open and stepped inside. Warmth rushed over me, the hum of chatter filling my ears. Relatives turned, smiling, their faces softening with holiday joy, until they saw me. Their smiles faltered. Silence rippled through the room. Grayson sat on the couch, a drink in his hand, his smirk already forming. My parents were by the dining table, their bodies tense, as though bracing for a storm they hoped wouldn't come. "Ethan," Mom said carefully, her voice trembling, "you came." I set my bag down slowly, unzipped it, and slid the thick file onto the table. The sound it made against the wood was louder than any shout. "This isn't about turkey," I said quietly, though my voice carried through the room like thunder. "This is about my life." Grayson chuckled, leaning back in his chair. "What's this? Homework?" I ignored him. I pulled out the first sheet, a grainy photo from the gas station surveillance camera. Grayson's car, time-stamped the night of the fire. "Your car," I said, "buying gasoline." The room shifted, Conversation stilled. Forks clinked softly against plates. Grayson's smirk wavered. Coincidence. Lots of people buy gas. I laid down the receipt, dated, timed, signed. This one's yours. Dad stepped forward, his face red. That doesn't prove anything. He probably just needed gas for the car. I pulled out the next page. A statement from a neighbor who had seen a man matching Grayson's build leaving my street the night of the fire. And this? Mom shook her head, tears glistening in her eyes. Ethan, stop, please. Don't do this tonight. It's Thanksgiving. Don't tear us apart. My hands trembled, but my voice stayed steady. You protected him once. You told me it was just a house. But it wasn't just a house. It was my life, and he burned it to the ground. I spread more papers across the table. Photos of the gas can, notes on Grayson's inconsistent alibis, Victor's meticulous timeline. Each page landed like a hammer strike. Relatives leaned in, whispering, their eyes darting between me, the evidence, and Grayson. Grayson's face drained of color. His smirk was gone. Sweat beaded on his forehead. You don't know what you're talking about, he muttered, his voice cracking. Then explain this, I said, slamming down the final piece. A time-stamped photo of him at the station, gas can in hand. Silence. The room was frozen. All I could hear was my own heartbeat. Mom pressed her hands to her mouth, shaking. Dad's jaw clenched, but his eyes flickered with doubt. Grayson, I said softly, deadly calm now. Tell them you didn't do it. Look them in the eye and swear it. Grayson's mouth opened, but no words came. His hands fidgeted, his eyes darted to the floor. That was all it took. The golden boy, the one they had always protected, was crumbling. Relatives began to murmur, some gasping, some shaking their heads. One aunt whispered, I knew something was off. Another muttered, all those years and they still protected him. My father slammed his fist against the table. Enough, he barked. This family will not be destroyed by accusations. But his voice was thinner now, his authority fragile. I stared at him, my voice steady. It's not the accusations that destroy families. It's the lies. And you chose lies over me for years. The weight of the evidence hung in the air like smoke. Grayson sat frozen, pale and sweating, his facade shattered. My parents looked between us, torn between the son they had worshipped and the truth they couldn't deny. I leaned forward, my voice low, final. You protected him every time, but not tonight. Tonight the truth comes out. The room was silent, every eye on Grayson. And for the first time, I saw it. The fear. The collapse of his arrogance. The realization that the fire he had started was about to consume him. The silence after my words was deafening. Papers lay scattered across the polished dining table, their sharp edges curling from the heat of the fireplace. Grayson sat slumped in his chair, pale and sweating, his hands still frozen around his glass. My parents stood rigid, their eyes darting between the evidence and me as though searching for a way to erase what they had seen. It was the first time in years the room wasn't filled with laughter, excuses, or dismissals. Just silence. Heavy, crushing silence. Say something, I pressed, my eyes locked on Grayson. He blinked, swallowed hard, and then tried to smirk again, but it faltered halfway, collapsing into a grimace. This is insane. You can't seriously believe I would do something like that. It's Thanksgiving. We're supposed to be family. Family doesn't burn down family homes, I shot back. Family doesn't threaten with gasoline. Family doesn't smirk while the rest of us choke on smoke. My voice shook, but not with fear, with fury. For once everyone in the room was forced to hear it. An uncle shifted uncomfortably in his chair. Richard, he said cautiously to my father. That's a lot of evidence. Maybe we should. No! Dad snapped, his face red, his fist trembling on the table. It's circumstantial. Grayson would never. Never? I interrupted. You don't even know half of what he's done, because you never wanted to look. You never wanted to see. A murmur rippled through the relatives. One aunt whispered to another, He always was a little off, wasn't he? A cousin shook his head. I knew Ethan wasn't lying. You all think I did this? He shouted, his voice high, desperate. Look at him. He's always hated me. He's been jealous since we were kids. This is his revenge, don't you see? He pointed at me, his finger trembling. He's fabricating this. He found some washed-up investigator to spin a story, and now you're all eating it up. I rose slowly, my eyes locked on his. If it's fabricated, then explain the receipt. Explain the footage. Explain why you were near my house the night it burned. His lips parted, but nothing came out. Mom's hands clutched the edge of the table so tightly her knuckles turned white. Tears welled in her eyes, streaming down her cheeks. Grayson, she whispered. Tell me it's not true. Please, tell me. But Grayson just stood there frozen, his face betraying the guilt he couldn't bury. Dad's voice cracked as he tried to hold the pieces together. This is madness. We can't let this tear us apart. Ethan, put this file away. For God's sake, it's Thanksgiving. I slammed my hand against the table, the papers fluttering. Stop hiding behind holidays, Dad. Stop hiding behind excuses. You've been doing it my whole life. Every time he failed, you shielded him. Every time I achieved something, you ignored me. And now your silence nearly cost me my life. Memories poured out of me like floodwaters. Remember when I saved for months to buy him that bike he wanted? You laughed at me when he threw it away the next day. Remember when I made honor roll? You didn't even look up from your paper. But when Grayson barely passed a math test, you threw him a party. Every time, every single time, I was invisible, and he was the golden boy. And this, I pointed to the file, to the ashes of my house in my mind. This is what your favoritism created, a monster who thought he could do anything and get away with it. My chest heaved as the words spilled, years of swallowed rage finally unleashed. The room was chaos now. Some relatives sided with me, shaking their heads, muttering, He's right, we've all seen it. Others clung to denial, whispering, But Grayson wouldn't. He couldn't. The divide was a chasm cutting through the family, deeper and wider with every passing second. Grayson suddenly lunged across the table, his hands grabbing at the file. Give me that, he snarled. You don't get to ruin me with lies. I shoved him back, the papers scattering like snowflakes around us. Gasps echoed through the room as we struggled, his face twisted with rage. Dad and a cousin rushed forward, pulling us apart. Grayson's eyes burned into mine, wild and furious. You'll regret this, he hissed, his voice low enough only I could hear. You think you've won, but this isn't over. I stood tall, straightening my shirt, gathering the scattered pages. My hands trembled, but my voice was steady. It is over, Grayson. You just don't know it yet. I looked around the room, meeting every gaze. This isn't just about a fire. This is about years of lies, years of betrayal. Tonight it ends. My mother sobbed quietly. My father turned away, unable to meet my eyes. Grayson stood shaking, his chest heaving, his mask gone. The golden boy was gone. What stood before us was something uglier, something everyone could finally see. I gathered the file into my arms, my heart pounding. The battle wasn't finished. The law still had to take its course. Grayson still had to face consequences. But the war for truth? That had shifted tonight. As I walked toward the door, I heard whispers ripple behind me. Some calling my name with support, some murmuring in disbelief, some crying. But above it all, I heard Grayson's voice, quiet and venomous. You haven't seen the last of me. And in that moment I knew he wasn't done. He would fight, and so would I. The night after Thanksgiving, silence pressed against my apartment walls like a living thing. The kind of silence that doesn't comfort, but suffocates. The city outside buzzed faintly, distant horns, the crunch of snow beneath tires. But in my small apartment, there was nothing. Just me, just the file, just the echo of Grayson's voice in my head. "You haven't seen the last of me." I sat hunched on the couch, staring at the stack of papers spread across my coffee table. Evidence, photos, receipts, witness accounts, each page scarred from his hands clawing at them. I ran my fingers over the creases, remembering the fury in his eyes when he realized I wasn't backing down. For a moment, my body wanted to collapse, to sink into exhaustion and forget it all. But the fire, the literal fire that had swallowed my home, and the one burning inside me, wouldn't let me rest. Because I knew he was right. I hadn't seen the last of him. Morning came too soon. My phone buzzed endlessly, relatives' numbers flashing across the screen one after another. I hesitated before answering the first one. My aunt, Patricia. Her voice was sharp, accusatory. "How could you do that to your cousin?" she hissed. "On Thanksgiving, no less. You embarrassed the family." "Embarrassed?" I said bitterly. "He burned down my house." "You don't know that," she snapped. "All you did was bring shame into that dining room. You think you're the victim, Ethan, but you're the one tearing us apart." I hung up. My hands trembled, but not with regret, with rage. The phone buzzed again. Another relative, another scolding voice. "You've always been jealous," my uncle said, "always trying to outshine him. And now this? Manufacturing evidence, hiring some washed-up cop to smear his name." I gritted my teeth, forcing my voice steady. "If you think this is about jealousy, you weren't watching last night. Did you see his face? He couldn't even deny it." There was silence on the other end before he muttered, "You're sick," and hung up. I thought that would be the end of it, until another call came. This time softer. My cousin Leah. "I believe you, Ethan," she whispered, her voice breaking. "I saw it. The way he froze when you showed the photo. He didn't even try to deny it." The tightness in my chest loosened slightly. "Thank you," I whispered back. Another call followed. "Stay strong," another cousin said. "You finally said what we've all been thinking for years. Don't stop now." The family was splitting. A war was brewing, not just between me and Grayson, but through every branch of our bloodline. And I knew who had lit the match. Over the next few days, Grayson struck back. I saw the signs everywhere. At work, whispers carried through the hallways. My coworkers glanced at me like I was something fragile or dangerous. My boss pulled me into his office, lips pursed tight. "Ethan," he said cautiously, "I don't want whatever's going on with your family to spill into the workplace. Handle this quietly." The word tasted like poison. That was what they had always wanted. From the time I was a child, they wanted me silent, invisible. But quiet had cost me my house, my peace, my sanity. I wasn't going back to that prison. The lies spread quickly. Grayson told people I had fabricated the file, that Victor was a fraud, that I was unstable, paranoid, obsessed. Some believed him, some didn't. But the damage was done. The court of public opinion was already fractured. I drove to Grandma's the next evening, desperate for her voice, her wisdom. She opened the door before I could knock, her frail frame bundled in a shawl. The smell of baked bread and lavender filled the air. "Oh, Ethan," she said softly, pulling me into a hug. "You look so tired." I sank into her small living room chair, the warmth of her home wrapping around me. For the first time in days, I felt safe. "Everyone's against me," I said, my voice cracked. "They think I'm jealous. They think I made it all up." Grandma sat across from me, her eyes steady, full of love. Let them think what they want. Truth doesn't need everyone's belief to exist. It just is. I wiped at my eyes, ashamed of the tears. I don't know how much longer I can fight. You've been fighting your whole life, she said gently. The difference now is, you're no longer fighting for their approval. You're fighting for yourself. And that's worth every ounce of strength you have left. Her words sank deep, like balm on a wound. I clutched her hand and whispered, "Thank you." She squeezed back. "Don't thank me. Just don't stop." The next day, I met Victor again at our usual coffee shop. The place was dim, smelling of strong espresso and burnt toast. He slid into the booth across from me, his leather notebook thicker now, pages stuffed with notes and photos. "He's unraveling," Victor said without preamble. His eyes were sharp, scanning the room before landing on me. I've seen men like him before. When their masks crack, they don't surrender. They lash out. My throat tightened. "What do you mean?" He flipped the notebook open and slid a photo toward me. Grayson outside a bar, yelling at another man, fists clenched. His face was twisted with rage. "He's drinking more, picking fights, getting sloppy. That makes him dangerous, but it also makes him easier to catch." I studied the photo, my stomach twisting. Victor leaned closer. "We've got enough to take this to the police, but it won't be simple. Your parents will fight tooth and nail. They'll try to bury it, bury you. Are you ready for that?" I looked at the photo again, at Grayson's twisted face, the same face that had smirked through my pain for years. "I'm ready," I said. My voice didn't shake. That evening, as snow fell in soft waves outside my window, there was a knock at the door. When I opened it, my parents stood there. My mother's face was streaked with tears, her hands twisting nervously. My father's jaw was tight, his eyes hard. "Ethan," Mom whispered, "please, stop this. You're tearing us apart." My chest ached, but my voice stayed firm. "He burned my house down, Mom. He could have killed me." Dad stepped forward, his voice stern. "Families survive by protecting each other, by keeping things inside the family." I stared at him in disbelief. "Protecting each other? You mean protecting him? You've never protected me, not once." For a moment, something flickered in his eyes. Doubt, shame, but it vanished quickly, replaced by steel. "We're done here," he said coldly. He pulled Mom away, leaving me standing alone in the doorway as snowflakes drifted in. Later that night, Alan showed up, stomping snow off his boots, a bag of takeout in one hand and a six-pack in the other. "You look like hell," he said bluntly as he set the food down. I gave a hollow laugh. "Thanks, that's what I was going for." We ate in silence for a while, the warmth of the food cutting through the chill. Then he leaned back, cracking open a beer. "Grayson's trying to drag you down with him," Alan said. "He's fighting dirty. But you've got proof, Ethan. You've got people who believe you. You've got me. And I'd follow you into a fire if I had to." The irony of his words made us both chuckle, but beneath it was truth. Alan's loyalty wasn't flashy, it wasn't loud, it was steady, and steady was what I needed most. A few nights later, I left work to find a note tucked under my windshield wiper. The handwriting was messy, rushed, but unmistakable. "Stop this or you'll regret it." My stomach dropped. My eyes darted around the dark parking lot, shadows stretching long under the flickering streetlights. Was he here, watching me? I crumpled the note in my fist, my pulse hammering. Fear clawed at me, but beneath it was something stronger. Resolve. I slipped the note into Victor's file, another piece of evidence, another nail in Grayson's coffin. The days that followed blurred together, but the file grew heavier with every passing hour. More witnesses, more inconsistencies, more threads tying Grayson to the fire. I visited Grandma often, letting her wisdom anchor me. I leaned on Alan, his jokes and steady presence keeping me from drowning. And I trusted Victor, who was building a wall of truth Grayson couldn't climb, no matter how desperately he tried. But even with all the evidence, all the support, I knew the truth deep in my bones. Grayson wasn't done. A cornered man is dangerous, and Grayson was more than cornered. He was unraveling. One night, as I lay awake in the dark, the faint hum of the city outside, I could almost hear it, the crackle of flames, the echo of his voice, the sound of footsteps creeping closer. The fire had destroyed my home, but Grayson wanted to destroy me. And I knew with every nerve in my body that the final confrontation was coming. The fire was only the beginning. The night after the threat note, sleep abandoned me entirely. I lay in the dark, staring at the ceiling, listening to the city hum faintly beyond the frost-covered window. Every creak of the building made me jolt. Every shadow on the wall twisted into Grayson's figure. He wasn't done. I could feel it in my bones. The fire had destroyed my house, but Grayson didn't want to stop at ashes. He wanted me broken, erased. And I knew the storm was coming. It came 3 days later. Victor called at dawn, his voice clipped, urgent. "Ethan, turn on the news." I stumbled to the TV, flipping it on. A reporter's voice cut through the static. Grayson Cole, 27, was taken into custody last night following a violent altercation outside a downtown bar. Witnesses report he attacked a man with a broken bottle. Police say alcohol was involved. He is currently being held pending further investigation. My knees buckled and I sank onto the couch. There he was, his mugshot glaring from the screen. The same smirk he wore at every family gathering was gone. His eyes were hollow, his lips pressed tight. Victor's voice returned. "He's slipping faster than I thought. This is good for us. It proves instability, shows a pattern of violence. But Ethan, he's going to fight back harder. Count on it." The calls began again, louder, harsher. "This is your fault," Patricia spat through the phone. "You pushed him. You humiliated him. Now look, he's in jail." "He put himself there," I snapped before hanging up. But then Leah called, her voice soft. "I saw the news. Ethan, thank you. Thank you for standing up. He's hurt so many of us, but you were the only one brave enough to say it." Her words cracked something inside me. For years I thought I was the only one, the invisible one, but I wasn't alone anymore. That evening my parents came again. This time they didn't knock, they barged in. Mom's eyes were wild, streaked with tears. Dad's voice was a whip. "How could you do this to your brother?" he shouted. "Do you have any idea what you've done? He's in jail, Ethan. Jail." "He put himself there," I repeated coldly. "Stop blaming me for his choices." Mom sobbed, clutching her chest. "You've ruined us. You've ruined everything." "Ruined?" I snapped. "He burned my house down. He threatened me. And you still protect him. That's not family. It's delusion." Dad's face hardened, but I saw it. The flicker of doubt, the crack in his armor. For the first time, he didn't have a ready defense. A week later, Victor called again. "We're ready," he said. "The police have the file. The evidence is overwhelming. But Ethan, you should be there when they confront him. Closure matters." The idea twisted my stomach, but I agreed. We met in a gray interrogation room at the precinct. The walls were bare, the air stale. A single table separated us. Grayson sat on the other side, wrists cuffed, eyes bloodshot. When he saw me, his lips curled into something between a sneer and a plea. "You think you've won, don't you?" he said, his voice hoarse. "You think you're the hero." I didn't answer. I slid the file across the table, every page a nail in his coffin. The detective leaned forward. Grayson, the evidence is clear. Gasoline purchase, surveillance footage, witness testimony. You were there the night of the fire. You said it. Grayson's mask cracked. His mouth opened, closed, opened again. Then the sneer returned, weaker this time. It doesn't matter. They'll never believe you. Mom, Dad, they'll never turn on me. I leaned forward, my voice steady, sharp. They don't have to. The law already has. When the detective left the room, Grayson slumped in his chair, the fight draining out of him. His hands shook. His eyes darted around like a trapped animal. You don't get it, he muttered. Everything I had, it was because of them. The praise, the gifts, the protection. And now it's gone. I swallowed hard. You did that to yourself. You always did. He looked up at me then, and for the first time I saw it. Fear. Real, raw fear. You're nothing without me, he spat weakly. I stood gathering the file. No, Grayson, I'm nothing because of you. But not anymore. Weeks passed. Snow piled high on the streets. Christmas lights blinked in windows. Families gathered. But in the courthouse there was no warmth, just cold truth. I sat in the gallery, Grandma on one side, Alan on the other. My parents sat across the aisle, their faces pale, rigid. They wouldn't look at me. The judge's voice rang out, steady and final. Grayson Cole, you are hereby sentenced to 8 years in state prison for arson and reckless endangerment, with possibility of parole after 5. May this serve as both punishment and rehabilitation. The gavel struck. The sound was like thunder, like freedom. Outside, the air was crisp, snowflakes drifting gently from the sky. Reporters shouted questions, cameras flashed, but I ignored them. Grandma squeezed my hand. It's over now, Ethan, she whispered. But I shook my head softly. No, it'll never be over. Not really, but it's enough. Alan clapped my shoulder. You did it, man. You faced him. That's more than most people could ever do. I managed a small smile. For the first time in years, my chest felt lighter. That night, I walked past the ruins of my old home one last time. Snow had settled over the blackened beams, softening the scars. The place that once symbolized loss now stood as a monument to survival. I touched the charred wood I had kept, the photo of Grandma and Grandpa tucked safely in my pocket. Grayson was behind bars. My parents were lost in their denial. But me, I was free. The fire had tried to consume me, but instead it forged me.